letting yourself come forward just enough from the hip socket only that you start to feel a stretch on the front of the hip. The opposite arm comes up overhead, and then you're gonna lean over towards the leg that's towards my left. Today we're gonna do a hip flexor stretch with lateral bending. And this is gonna increase the stretch in the hip flexors in this area that we spend so much time in a chair, seated, driving, working, that it gets really closed down and compressed. And we're gonna extend this stretch up into our sides as well to make it a really effective use of our time.
Yeah, and Lily, can you turn around really quick?
Yes, which way? This way?
Face me. So when you look at her spine here, you have like the spinal erectors or the paraspinal muscles that run vertically. So as Lily bends this way, hope you can appreciate that's also going to stretch out the paraspinal muscles or the spinal erectors, as well as all the side wall and lateral hip as well.
And it feels so dang good. So I'll show you one from the front to start. We're just gonna come into a simple kneeling position with one leg out in front of you, with the foot about 90 degrees, or excuse me, the knee about 90 degrees. And without letting any of this come into your lumbar spine, right? Using proper breathing and bracing so that the extension is coming from the hip and not from the low back. It's gonna be impossible to get a good hip flexor stretch if you're losing it in your low back. And I'll show you from the side of the
And if you're unsure where your breath is going, use stuff like your waistbands or your thumbs or any sort of like belt or elastic band that you might have around to wrap all the way around you, so you can kind of feel that pressure on the back side of your abdomen as well. Really breathe into it.
Yep, exactly. Breathing all the way around, letting yourself come forward just enough from the hip socket only that you start to feel a stretch on the front of the hip. The opposite arm comes up overhead, and then you're gonna lean over towards the leg that's forward. So my left leg is forward, I'm leaning over to the left with my right arm. Oh, and it's such a nice stretch down here, but then all the way up here as well.
And then one thing to note here, this is something that you might not think about, but a lot of people as they rotate over, this big toe is gonna come up, okay? Really focus on trying to, Lily, can you switch back?
Yeah.
Go a whole bunch. Go in that position again. Okay, do that again. Okay, so hopefully you can see it this time as Lily comes over. Some people might lift and rotate on the outside of the foot. Really focus on getting that big toe down, right? That big toe knuckle right where it meets the foot down, and creating tension there. Really actively utilize your foot. Feel those arch muscles turn on and plant here as you rotate and bend up there.
And not so much rotation, mostly just lateral bending over to the side. And it's a great point John's making, because we can use almost all of our exercises as foot exercises as well if we bring enough consciousness to it, or we can use these exercises to torque our knee and our foot and can contribute to the unhealthy patterns instead of helping those parts of us get stronger.
Remember that every time you do something, you're training your brain on how to orient and control the things that you're not focusing on. So if you're doing this and having this big toe pickup, what you're really teaching your brain to do is every time I bend to the side, I'm gonna pull my foot off the ground, which isn't gonna really damage you or hurt you very much in this drill, but may come to end up biting you in the butt later on. So anytime you notice those weird little things where something is kind of happening screwily downstream or upstream from what the actual main action is, just try to correct those, and we'll just try to stay as solid and fine-tuned as possible.
I want to show you this exercise from the side one time, just so you can see that this is not happening in my lumbar spine at all. So it's really common to be like, oh yeah, look at this great stretch I'm doing for my hip. Well, look at my low back. It's rounded so far forward that there's no tension at the top of the hip flexors to pull from. The hip flexors actually attach all the way up here to the middle of your spine. So if you're letting it go forward, you're not stretching your hip flexors. So you're pulling the front of the hips up, almost like you're pulling up on suspenders. This is a posterior pelvic tilt. And you're keeping that in place via your breath, so that when you go forward, the motion is happening at your hip and not at your low back. So just the hip motion, the opposite arm comes up, and you lean over to the side, and you're gonna feel how great of a stretch that is.
And there's nothing inherently wrong with bending the other way, away from the foot in front. If that feels better to you, or you want to throw in both ways, more power to you.
Totally. Enjoy.